And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network. Here in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. On the mighty, mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And of course, the mothership, CoalitionRadio.us, where links to our Facebook page, our Liberty Media page, our YouTube page, all can be found. And we're working on the cosmetics of all this. It's always a work in progress. We're celebrating our 7th year as a programming entity. We started out in the earliest days of internet radio at WBOB. We moved on to AM 790 and then the big WPRO. Just a few short years ago, we went digital and moved here to the Go Local Live Broadcast Center. We continue to march on ever upwards. So let's get right to it. Tonight, joining me is someone that I'm proud to call a friend, someone who is quite active, hyperactive, if you would say, in the Libertarian movement. Not just the party, but the movement. From his earlier days as one of the founding podcasters, if you will, of the Liberty movement, then into active participation in the Libertarian Party, now into active leadership in the Libertarian Party as an alternate member to the Libertarian National Committee, the ruling body, if you will, of the Libertarian Party, the Big L. His commitment to liberty has been lifelong, and now he is attempting to run for the second time to be the chairman of the Libertarian Party nationally. It was quite a controversial race 4 years ago. And in recognition, even though he did not win, it was clear to the party at large that folks had spoken and needed his participation on the Libertarian National Committee, where he has served now for a couple of years, working, if you will, with me on the Affiliate Support Committee. Joshua Smith, welcome back to the Coalition.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Pat. I really appreciate it.
So let's we've got a little bit of time here. The first time you were on, you were in town, and you just kind of stepped from behind the curtain for a few minutes. Let's talk about Joshua Smith for a little bit, because the beauty of indie media is you got time. You can really develop a subject, really get into a conversation. Tell us a little about yourself, your background, the early days, if you will, and what got you into the liberty movement.
Sure, absolutely, Pat. I have a pretty normal upbringing. I'm from a broken family, a single mother home, like probably the majority of children these days. I had my problems, did pretty well in school, but lost interest at the time around high school, and I joined the military straight out of high school right after September 11th. I was going to protect my country, I thought, and within 8 or 9 months of being in the military, I was at war. I was in the Middle East. I was a big part of the shock and awe campaign, and I found myself slowly getting jaded on, the two-party system and the military-industrial complex, and not really being happy with what had happened, why we were in Iraq. And so when I got home, I was still a registered Republican, but I didn't find a home for my political values there anymore until I found Ron Paul in 2008. And I worked on Ron Paul's campaign in 2008 during the Occupy movements. If you're familiar with those, I was working, in Oakland with the Occupy movements, trying to campaign for Ron Paul. So it's pretty interesting because, it's a pretty leftist movement mostly. Mm-hmm. We had the opportunity to bring a lot of people over to our side there. And it really did help out with his campaign here in California. And then sometime in 2009 or 2010, I joined the Libertarian Party for the first time because I heard them Adam Kokesh talking about it, which I think back and I was like watching videos and reading stuff that he did. And so I found the Libertarian Party and became a member. I never really found a viable place for my activism at the time. I didn't realize there was a state affiliate. I didn't realize there were local affiliates. I really had no idea what I was doing. And so I ended up, kind of doing my own brand of activism and doing the publication and Think Liberty and, just being a blogger and podcaster and, doing interviews with big libertarian thinkers around the country like Walter Block and Michael Pickens and Larry Sharp. And then sometime before this 2016 presidential race, I, found the local party in Washington. I live in Washington State, Southern Washington, and I found the local party there, and they were rocking. And I ended up finding the state party there, and they were rocking, and they were in a competition with who could get more members with Colorado. And so I went to their state convention, and then I ended up getting voluntold that I would be a regional rep there.
We've all been
Back,
voluntold. Yeah.
yeah, I was the only one that showed up to their state convention from the region, and so they made me the region rep. And I, like I said, we had one local party in 5 counties, so I started working to try and build new affiliates. And there was a really cool city council race going on in one of the counties, and it was a learning experience for me. And I felt like I was doing it all by myself at the time. And then come 2017, I was really following the national leadership, and I worked on Gary's campaign in Southern Washington, and I wasn't happy with the leadership, and so I decided to try and throw up a Hail Mary, if you call it that. It was I never really expected it to be this big campaign. I thought, I have this publication that has about 12,000 followers. I'll put out an intent to run statement, see what happens, and it blew up. It really did. I ended up traveling to 20 states. I got to learn all kinds of invaluable stuff about the movement and activism and politics and how to make the party more successful. And so it was a win for me. I lost. Eventually I took 25% or 23.5% of the vote at the national convention. I didn't do very well in the debate, but I learned a lot, and I ended up on the board anyways. Then I moved back to California. I ended up on their executive committee. I ended up becoming the treasurer of my local party, the chair of the affiliates support committee for national. I'm on the platform committee, the membership committee, the ops comp committee. I mean, just any committee that I could get on, I got on, because it's just a learning experience. And so 2020, getting ready to roll around, and I give it another shot. I've learned. I can take everything that I've learned and kind of the good and the bad, and step back and reassess the situation and try and bring that fire back to the LNC again.
Now let's step back for a second and talk about Think Liberty, because really it and a few others were a handful of the first libertarian media outfits, if you will, to recognize the power of new media, to recognize that, quite frankly, the mainstream media isn't really hankering to invest much time in talking to libertarians. They're just not. Despite having a great story in 2016, it was still pulling teeth to get national coverage. I think the lesson that we need to learn is that independent media, in the aggregate, one podcast at a time, one effort at a time, one blog at a time, is a powerful, powerful tool. What were you thinking when you got involved in the formation of Think Liberty, and what were some of the early subjects you covered, and when did you realize that you'd sort of gotten lightning in a bottle?
Sure. The cool thing about Think Liberty is that it was a combination of contributors from all different walks of life and all different philosophies, and it wasn't just a set like, hey, we're an anarcho-capitalist output, or we're just minarchists, or we're just libertarians, or we're party politics. It was kind of a really good mix of things, and so I kind of knew that would help move the publication forward, because it had something for everybody. And I just want to be clear, I don't really work with Think Liberty more much. I'm still really good friends with them, but I was just way too busy, and those guys do a great job without me. And but at the time, it was, we wanted to do something fun with friends, and I think we focused a lot on, doing libertarian news events and philosophy papers and opinion pieces. My big focus was doing the interviews. We had these YouTube interviews with, I said, Walter Block, Patrick Friedman, it's just great people who need to be highlighted in the liberty movement. And the cool thing is that when an independent media source like that takes control and starts getting followers, they make new libertarians, and it's important for us to be aggressive and go out and get mainstream media as much as possible, but it's also important that we're using our small news media publications to bolster our campaigns and our activists. Yeah, it was a great thing. Being a part of it.
No, it's interesting to me. Recently, a couple of people have thrown some slings and arrows at the libertarian blogosphere and the libertarian podcast universe, and from within the movement. And Yeah, there's to a certain degree, there's some Me Too conversations that take place in the sense of, there's a certain breadth of material that's covered and recovered. But I just want to take a shout out to everything from Think Liberty on down to that one person who might be just doing a podcast in his basement. If it's all important. It's critical that we amplify each other's voices. A couple folks recently have taken some, I think, some really insulting shots at, at some of the smaller ones who are, maybe they're either the material or the production values might not be quite up to the acumen of some of these people. And it's only a handful of people doing this, but I just want to point out that anyone out there who is investing in a podcast or a blog, who's willing to expend the intellectual effort to discuss issues like this, I just think are incredibly important, from the biggest to the smallest. And organizations like Think Liberty started out with a handful of people. And quite frankly, it's been a monumental effort. They've changed a lot of minds. They've introduced people. And listen, hell, if that one little podcast or that one little blog reaches someone that we weren't able to reach as a national party, it's a win as far as I'm concerned, and it's helped keep those people engaged. So I just wanted to put that out there, because every one of these larger blogs started out as a handful of people in a basement or a handful of people at a bar, just throwing ideas back and forth. If we can harness all of that energy in 2020, and Lord knows we're going to need it, then hell, every one of those folks are soldiers for liberty. It's something I feel very strongly about. The state of the party now. Now, you've got a political party comprised of people who very often don't believe in political parties. You've got a handful of caucuses that are, I think, working aggressively to promote their own perspective on liberty. Talk to me about the Mises Caucus, because it's probably the most remarkable story within our universe, if you will, our world within the last 2 years. What has Michael Hayes accomplished, along with, quite frankly, a group of other activists? But he's the front-facing person. What have they accomplished, and what do you think the value of them is to the movement at large?
Yeah, absolutely. And the caucus, much like me, saw a leadership team in the Libertarian Party that they weren't happy with. They didn't really reflect their values. They didn't think the work that was being done was the work that needed to be done. And so they started a group of people that, it initially took form as a group, right? It was like a Facebook group. And then it became this PAC, and we ended up filing as a federal hybrid PAC. We have a super PAC and a regular candidate PAC, and it just kind of just steamrolled into this beautiful thing where we've been able to work with local candidates in the country. We've given over $6,000 to 8 local candidates around the country. We were able to work on decrim Denver to get psilocybin decrimmed in Colorado. We're now working Texas gun legislation initiative to roll back the gun laws that we're trying to propose there. So it was born out of this. We weren't happy with the way something was running, and we're going to do something about it. And now it's becoming the driving force of the Libertarian Party. We've been able to instill people leadership all over the country, from the national on down to local level. We've been able to help get people elected. We endorsed a elected city council member in Oklahoma, which was really nice. It was before we could really financially help somebody, but we did endorse him, and then he won. And so it's becoming this big driving force behind the liberty movement and the party. And as the candidate committee chair, I'm just couldn't be prouder of those guys. They're really, really doing a lot of great stuff. So, but it's beautiful, and a lot of flack, but they're doing a lot of work. So,
well, and to that end, I'm not sure why we as libertarians constantly try to produce this circular firing squad. They're out there doing something that not a lot of people are, which is raising money. And not only are they raising money, they're writing checks to candidates. And there's something about when you're, when you're a candidate for a local office, which is, we all agree, the building block really of the liberty movement going forward. And you get a national recognition from a large group of fellow, again, soldiers in the Liberty War, for lack of a better cliche. But quite frankly, you get that type of recognition, and then you get a check in the mail. So maybe you're not spending your grocery money that week to do the cards that you're handing out, or to pay for those internet ads. You know, somebody beside you is actively involved in financially supporting a campaign. They've got skin in the game, and that's what's been missing from the National Party. There isn't a whole hell of a lot of skin in the game. It's great to go out and say, we need 100,000 candidates. Come on down. The price is right. And again, I'm not here to knock anyone's efforts, because there's a lot of very good people, both at the LNC headquarters and a lot of people working very hard. But it's great to promote that. We need to support it as well. And the only way you support that, if you're living in Jersey, or in my case, Rhode Island, is stroking a check. It's nice to share on Facebook. It's nice to retweet, but you're asking people to go run for office on a third party, which often needs great introduction, often needs to overcome popular myths about the party, to, in many cases, people who could run as a Republican or Democrat and win, or certainly have a much easier time of it. You're asking people to take time away from their families, whether they're, in your case, running for the national chair, or in the case of local candidates. You're asking a lot from a certain group of people. And the ability of a caucus to coalesce around a certain set of issues within the Liberty Movement, and then get those people moving to actually produce real gains. Listen, we know, you and I know, and everybody in the movement who's an activist knows about the herding cats. We need more of that and less conversation, quite frankly.
Sure.
You know, we need more people who are focused on actual productivity, on, you ready for this? Accomplishing things. Because isn't that the single biggest issue here in our party? We have thousands of really nice, well-intentioned, really wicked smart people, don't we? But if we don't accomplish anything, we lose another generation to the statists.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on running thousands of candidates and, nobody home?
I think it was a mistake. I think asking to run 2,000 candidates when we barely have the infrastructure to run 200 was a mistake. And frankly, we got laughed at in a lot of states. We had a lot of paper candidates, a lot. We got laughed at in states where they had a candidate running with no website. It's not a good look for us, and it doesn't make us look very professional if we're just running 200 really good candidates and 500 paper candidates. It's not helpful, and we don't have the infrastructure to support all those candidates. And when we ask a candidate to run, we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure built so that those candidates can feel like they're running for a reason, they're running for a cause, they can win. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm running for chair. It's one of the reasons why I want good leadership in the party, because leadership strokes a culture that has good candidates and builds infrastructure and raises money.
Right.
And so that's what we need to go. I think that is a noble goal to run 2,000 candidates across the country, but if you're asking people to run and you're not telling them how to run and you're not giving them the cheat codes, if you will, then they're not going to do anything spectacular, and we're going to get laughed at. Right.
I mean, ultimately, what you literally had situations where we're asking people who would otherwise be activists in, and again, I want to be careful here, because everyone who ran, everyone who expends that kind of effort is a hero in my eyes. It's just that,
yeah.
Are we burning up the efforts of some of our heroes? Because
Sure.
Someone who ran for office might have been a perfectly great campaign manager and in someone else's campaign, or might have been really good at making some phone calls and really good at getting out the vote effort, as opposed to trying to maintain this facade of having 2,000 campaigns. And again, there are a couple of really good, campaign activists / teachers, who in and of themselves have sacrificed greatly. But we're talking about an entire nation here. We need to pick our battles.
Pat, if the goal had been, say, hey, we would like to run 2,000 local candidates around the country. Now that might have been a goal that maybe would have attained a lot of things, because then then you've got to think about it. There's 2,000 communities learning about libertarianism, right? And there, the city council campaigns or a mayoral race, they're typically a little easier to run, especially in some of these small towns. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time. You can make it to an event on the weekend and speak about it. But when you start getting into some of these bigger federal campaigns and some of these state rep campaigns, I mean, the state rep campaign that I initially was going to run, the lady raised like $4 million for a state rep campaign. That's more than the whole national. That's more than the whole national budget for our party.
Right.
We asymmetrical warfare sounds good, but we can get outspent on all fronts. But what we can do is run local and county races and really make a difference. And I think Jeff Hewitt in California proved that. So.
Right, and ultimately, that's a place where you don't have to be part of a large political machine within a large statewide organization to legislate successfully.
Sure.
When you look at what a certain city councilwoman has done in a certain small town in Minnesota, when you look at the folks that we've had out there who have managed to be successful against incredible odds, I mean, astonishing work, you're all of a sudden able to legislate. If you're on a water board or a school board, you change people's lives, and that L for libertarian is right there. You're able to, on a daily basis, explain to people why your philosophy is tied into the type of changes you're attempting to make.
Exactly.
And so, what would, it kind of lends into the, all right, we've taken some, I don't want to say shots, but we've discussed that program. What approach do you want to take as national chairman to getting people elected at some level? What's your goal? What's your aims?
My goal is obviously, working with affiliates to become stronger. I think that having a strong affiliate wherever you're running is always going to help, help you be more successful, right? So I really want to raise our membership numbers, because that gives us more activists, that gives us more campaign volunteers, that gives us more donors. Those are the kind of things that can help build an infrastructure to be able to run 2,000 candidates across the country. So that's what national leadership should be focused on. But the donor base, the membership base, new activists, new memberships, fundraising, those are the things that they should always be focused on. And we need to be aggressive. And media, the aggressive media mindset where the media is not going to come to us, so our national leadership team is going to go out and take media. That is so important, because now people are going to start looking at L next candidate's name when they hear the word libertarian, right? So those are the really big things for me. Is that, like I said, it's the fundraising, the member retention and recruitment, and aggressive media strategies. Those have got to be the most important things coming out of national.
Let's talk messaging. Social media is that, they talk about the double-edged weapon. Social media can work for you. Social media can be a disaster. Should social media ever be divisive or used as a tool to divide libertarians?
Not to divide libertarians, no. We don't have enough libertarians to divide.
Let's talk about the primacy. Okay, you and I are clearly big L libertarians.
Sure.
Should social media ever be used to support the goals of other political parties?
No, absolutely not. Not from the big L Libertarian Party. That is just asinine to even think that we could get away with doing that and it would somehow help our cause. No, absolutely not. Those two parties are enemies. They try to keep us off the ballot in several states and counties. They try to use money to defeat our candidates. We should never help them, ever.
On any level, regardless of personal relationships.
Sure. I mean, look, if you're personally friends with a Liberty Republican that is going to run in a race that has no libertarian running in it and nobody that's more libertarian, do what you want. But the national social media should not be used to bolster any candidates that are not libertarians.
End of story.
End of story.
Okay. I mean, to me, it's an absolute. And you and I are kind of alluding to, and we don't need to get into the muck of it, But we've been treated to the specter of the highest levels of leadership somehow promoting the notion that a Republican, the same party that has expanded our wars, the same party that has engaged in a generation of discrimination against the LGBTQ community, the same political party that is literally imprisoning in concentration camp-like facilities folks who want to come to this country illegally, the same political party that has destroyed the value of our currency, simultaneously blowing up deficits. For the love of God, why the hell would we ever want to do anything to enable these people? Explain, Lucy, explain.
I don't have an answer for you, Pat.
And the notion that somehow do you subscribe to the notion once and for all that Liberty Republicans somehow can convert the abusive husband that is the Republican Party? Can they convert those people?
No. They're the whipping boys for the party. I mean, there's just no way. Anytime someone tells me that as a libertarian I need to join the Republican Party and try to change it from within, I just scoff, because it's just not possible. The Republican Party has been going the wrong direction for a couple decades. Why? How has people getting into it to try and change it changed it? They haven't. It's just gone further down the rabbit hole than what it was even 20 years ago. And it's just insane to think that libertarians can get in there. They don't like us. They don't like our policies. They don't support the things that we want to do. They don't support rolling back all these sweeping regulations and laws and taxes, and they don't want to end the drug war. And why? How on earth do you think you should get in there and change? You can't. You can't do it. There's no way. We have a party for that already. It's called the Libertarian Party, and you're free to join. It's $25 a year, and you will help with that $25 keep our lights on and have candidates win.
It really is that simple. How would you define the role, the working role, day to day, of a national chairman, as opposed to, say, an executive director, as opposed to, say, a staff member? What do you see as the day-to-day responsibilities of a national chairman?
Well, all party business is the day-to-day responsibility of the national chairman. Plain and simple, that's just how it is. Obviously, hiring and firing of staff, but they should be making every day membership calls and fundraising calls every single day. You block out an hour and make some phone calls. They should be doing it every day. You should always be looking for new donors. You should be writing op-eds. You should be trying to call media outlets to get people, either yourself or media liaisons, onto any kind of media we can get people into. There's a lot of work involved there. It's a full-time job. It's not a part-time, whenever you feel like a job. You need to wake up every day. What's best for the party on the very forefront of your brand, and do everything it takes, including making fundraising calls, making membership calls, writing op-ed. This is the kind of stuff that the chair should always be doing.
Let's talk about issues, because quite frankly, there are 1,000 issues we could tackle. But I think it's important that my opinion, I love your insight into this, that the national party, particularly in a non-election year, should focus on. Rather, I find our approach right now, and I'm not, Lord knows I'm not trying to call anybody out, but I find that is sort of the reaction du jour to whatever the perceived crisis is. Should we pick out a couple of issues in a non-election year and really just focus on them and really try to create a better understanding, if you will, not to change to the current winds, not to apologize, but perhaps to pick out a couple of issues and really make them the focus so people walk away with an understanding of what libertarians stand for. If you were to do that on a couple of issues, say, what would be the top 3 issues that you'd want to focus on as national chair, running, if you will, the oversight of the national libertarian machine?
Well, I think the number one issue of our time is the anti-war sentiment. I think that, the federal government uses 30% of our paychecks to continue to fight wars overseas. It's an an issue that we see eye to eye with people from all walks of life on. And we're the only party that's pushing that issue. We're the only one. You know, the anti-war issue has got to be the most important issue for the Libertarian Party. And I think we should be talking about it all the time. We should be putting out media about it. We should have people like Scott Horton advising our candidates on it. It's just very, very important that we make that the forefront of our push. We're the only party that really cares to talk about it, you know. Currently, we have a president who's saying he's going to bring troops home, but he's not. He sent another 4,000 or 400 troops over to Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's not ending. They're not pulling people back from the woods, and we need to be the strongest anti-war voice in politics today. We have to be that. Outside of that, I think, you know, ending the drug war is obviously important to people all over the country. We're locking thousands of people in cages for years and years and years of their life for ingesting plants still. I think that's insane. I think people all over the country see eye to eye with us on that as well. Immigration's a big one. You know, I think that regardless of your stance on national borders as a libertarian, I believe that anybody can look at our current immigration policy, probably say, you know, there's probably some changes that need to be made. You know, we can't have people sleeping in cages. This isn't okay. We need to figure out a better way. So I think, you know, those are some pretty big issues. But the anti-war sentiment is my personally biggest issue, and I think it needs to be the Libertarian Party's biggest issue as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. To me, I guess my top two would be anti-war first, immigration second, war on drugs third. As a party, relative to our standing in the general population in 2016, we polled significantly better amongst military veterans. Are you disappointed as a party that we have let those 4 years slip without actively engaging at some level the veterans, the veterans movement? I mean, particularly amongst your generation, so many of whom served in some form in either the first or second wars, or this, in some cases, lifetime relationship, as I say, we have with Afghanistan. Was that a missed opportunity, and do you see value in pursuing that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, you can look at the Ron Paul campaigns for all the evidence you need. Ron Paul had the most active duty and veteran single donations out of any candidate in that Republican primary for a reason. Because veterans and active duty military members understand the need for rolling back war. Because they're the ones out there fighting it. They're the ones who know that we don't need to be there. They're the ones that want to come home, be with their families, and heal. And we're not tapping into those veterans. We're doing something very, very, very wrong. Very wrong.
They're coming to us. That's the astonishing part. More so, I mean, and this is anecdotal, but more than any other single, I hate to call it an interest group, let's just say single coalition of individuals, they are seeking us more aggressively, perhaps, than any other group of individuals. If they can find us on their own, imagine, if you will, if we actually actively targeted our membership drives directly at veterans. And
yeah.
As you pointed out, you know, Scott Horton came to Rhode Island just a year ago this weekend. A phenomenal individual, articulate, passionate, beyond passionate, but at the same point, well-informed to a degree that I think frankly exceeds just about any federal legislator I've met in my lifetime.
Nobody has more insight to war than Scott Horton. I don't think that 5-star generals know as much about war as Scott Horton does.
Yeah, it's encyclopedic. Imagine if we just simply presented him to veterans groups and said, "Hey, listen, let's just talk, you know, and do the Larry Sharp method. Let's just have a conversation, plant a seed." Again, there's so many low-hanging fruit that, and I understand resources are always an issue. I get that better than anybody. You know, I work with a group of very dedicated individuals in one of the bluest states in the nation. But that being said, there's too many talented people who need to be harnessed in this organization. reflections, if you will, and by the way, if you're just joining me, Josh Smith is the candidate for the national chairmanship of the Libertarian Party at a convention to be held in Austin, Texas this coming year. For many folks who are entering the convention season, if you want to be a delegate, now is the time to sign up to the National Party. The National Party needs your support, and it also needs dedicated, involved people like Josh Smith. We're running into a time now where we're going to have a national election. It's fairly clear that whoever our candidates are, and probably won't have the name recognition, if you will, that we had with the two governors. What do you believe the role of the national party should be in a national election? What are your thoughts on that direction?
Well, here's my thing, and I've said this several times. Our presidential nominee and vice presidential nominee they're chosen to go on a national media tour for the Libertarian Party. That's what their job is. Most of us are under no illusion that we're going to have a Libertarian president in 2020, right? So we want whoever's going to be able to go out there and educate the population and get as many votes as possible, too, because that's what helps us keep ballot access around the country. We get that 5%, that magic 5% number. That's what gets us into the debates. But as important is educating people on what libertarian is, what libertarian is, and giving them a role model to move them towards our causes. And so I think that once the Libertarian presidential nominee is chosen, the party needs to do some work in the states to help the states build the infrastructure so that when the presidential election is happening and they're touring around the country and they're going to different states and doing their media tour, that the state parties, they have the opportunity to, kind of take some of that trickle down. And people that are coming in and trying to get involved because of the presidential election should be trickling into the state parties and the local parties. And I think, it all comes back to infrastructure. It's all it is. Our affiliates are created to create infrastructure for our candidates so that we can win elections, fundraise, so that we can get in the media. So I think that's what the national party's job is with the presidential election, is to help, build infrastructure anywhere it can and use that presidential election to do so.
No, and I agree. One of my disappointments from 2016 was the absence of any real interaction in many states' affiliates with the national campaign. There are some that argue that, the national party should not dictate to the campaign. Well, of course they shouldn't. But don't conflate that with creating an environment where there's, mutual cooperation, where, the presence of a national candidate can be used to endorse local candidates and give them some airtime, at the same time presenting them the opportunity to, again, as a national candidate, you're right, educate people about what libertarianism is really about, as opposed to the myths that are created by the duopoly. Because the duopoly is not interested, nor is a lot of the conventional media interested in the competition. They're just not. And I look to states like Ohio, and there are so many like this, where you've got real heroes in the trenches, managing to get ballot access or fighting for ballot access, despite the best efforts of reasonable politicians like John Kasich. Because he's such a reasonable liberty Republican. He believes in liberty as long as it involves in taking away the voting rights, if you will, of libertarians. And I think we have to start using the same type of phrases the civil rights movement uses with regard to stealing votes and preventing people from exercising their right to vote. All right, with the libertarian movement, because they are actively working to marginalize us in the same way that they have marginalized minority communities across the generations. And
absolutely. And I'll tell you, Ohio doesn't even have the worst ballot access laws. There's other states that are worse. Alabama is horrendous.
Rhode Island, the worst, and that's from that's from the ballot access guy. All right. All right.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out to folks in Rhode Island, you need 5% of either a gubernatorial race or the presidential race. Alrighty then. You know, it ain't easy. You know, but we've got a couple minutes left. Let's close on this. I see you as being ceaselessly optimistic about the future of the party. Whenever you discuss it, you got a smile on your face, and you see the green shoots. You see, the opportunities that lie ahead of us. My profound hope, and I love your comment on this, is that the sort of cynicism, if you will, that has permeated a number of party activities, a number of relationships, will go away. How important is it for you as a leader to display a sense of purpose and optimism amongst the party faithful?
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked a lot about that over the last 2 years. We have to cultivate a culture that is optimistic and is wanting to win, because it hasn't been the culture for 40 years. The culture has been like, okay, well, we're going to lose this race, so let's get out at what we can. I want our culture to say, we're going to win these races, and this is how we're going to win this race. And I think it's just super important. And I think that starts at the highest echelon of leadership from any affiliate. So I'm going to stay optimistic, and a lot of my optimism comes from the success that I've had. It's from the fact that I've been able to sign up hundreds of members around the country just by being who I am, just by being myself. It's we've been able to raise money, and we've been able to raise money for the party, and do things with the affiliate support committee. I'm optimistic because of the successes that I've had, and I know that culture can be bred for the rest of the party around the country.
I've done this to you once before. And if you had a minute or two and you kind of do, give folks just a reason right now. Just and it's been a great conversation, but kind of look in the eyes of the rest of the party out there and tell folks exactly why Josh Smith should be the next national chair.
Thanks, Pat. I think that I should be the next national chair because I put in the work. Honest to God, my campaign slogan last year was "Let's get to work," and I embodied that the second I walked off that stage in 2018. I became like I said, the chair of the affiliate support committee. I got on every single committee I could. I started working campaigns. I've been successful doing the work that I said, and I want to take that and put it on a grander scale as the chair of the Libertarian National Committee. And I believe that with the help of the people that I've surrounded myself and the work that I've already done and the success I found, we can be more successful as a party around the country.
There you go. Folks, Josh Smith, he is running to be the chairman of your Libertarian Party nationally. Currently, he serves on the Affiliate Support Committee, a host of other committees that betray even the extreme levels of the alphabet soup that is your LNC. I'm proud, actually, that I'll be going to my first LNC meeting in person as an alternate to my region in Miami this coming month. I'm looking forward to the spirit, the community, the engagement, and shaking a few people's hands who still won't call me after 6 years. But I'm not obsessed.
We're going to have Cuban sandwiches, Pat, you and I.
All right, buddy. Listen, Josh, again, thanks for coming on tonight. Don't be a stranger. In the spirit of cooperation, of course, the coalition doors are open to anyone who is running for presidency, vice presidency, and the national chairman, as well as a variety of posts on the LNC. It's all about the conversation. It's all about discussion. And quite frankly, this party could use a lot more of that, particularly at the national level. So, Josh, thanks for joining me tonight.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Pat. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
All right, buddy. We're going to call it quits for the evening, but we ain't going away. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage-porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here in the city of Providence, the city we so love, the naked city, the city of about 360,000 stories. It's a crisp fall evening. Take a moment. Go out tonight and sample, all the sin that this city has to offer. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. On the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And, of course, the mothership at coalitionradio.us. Folks,